Combat in Baldur's Gate 3 is very different to the Divinity Original Sin series as it follows the Dungeons & Dragons 5e principles as closely as it can. In today's video, we're going to break down the combat system, whether you're new to Dungeons & Dragons or you have been playing it for years and just trying to learn a bit more about the Baldur's Gate 3 version of this combat system, then this is the video for you. This video is sponsored by my Twitch channel. We are currently streaming Baldur's Gate 3 a couple of times a week, playing in co-op and just seeing what we can kind of do in this interesting game world. So if you have any questions about this video or any of my other videos, do jump over there and let's have a chat about it. Firstly, Baldur's Gate 3 is a turn-based combat system with a slight twist. If your allies have their turn next to each other, you will take both of these turns simultaneously. This also means that in co-op, if you and your friend have their turns together, you will take your actions at the same time, speeding up combat a little bit and allowing you to focus on some focus fire because you can take your turns at the same time. You can kind of control the battlefield a little bit easier. What this also means is that you need to be careful about that end turn button. If you hover over that button there, you'll see that all the party members that have their turn currently will be displayed and what actions they've already taken from movement, action, and bonus action. Now that you understand how turns work, let's turn our attention towards hit chances, which is the next thing on our list. Your hit chance is displayed via a percentage on the left-hand side of the screen, and this is primarily affected by three things: your distance to the target. The further away you are, the lower the chance that you'll hit them. Darkness, the darker the area around you and the enemy, the lower the chance. This is affected by your dark vision as well. If you do have a race that does have dark vision, whether it's normal or superior, this will affect the percentages as well. And the last is high ground versus low ground. If you're on the high ground, you immediately have the advantage on the enemy, and you can also shoot a little bit further outside your normal range. Also, if someone is occupying a high ground that you want, you can give them a little bit of a shove off the edge. I'm sure they won't mind. Whereas if you're on the low ground, you will have a disadvantage on the attack and they will have the advantage on you. There are other ways you can affect your hit chance as well, like a spell called Bless, which gives you an extra D4 roll on your attack rolls. But the three main things you need to remember is distance, darkness, and high ground. They're the three key things that are focused on your hit chance. Now, before we talk about what advantage and disadvantage is, I think we need to explain what an attack roll actually is. Every attack action that you make will cause an attack roll to occur before a damage dice has been rolled. This attack roll is then compared against the creature's armor class. If you roll higher than the armor class, the attack hits. If you roll lower, it misses. You can also critical hit by rolling a natural d20, meaning you roll a 20 before any modifier has been applied to your dice roll. You can view a creature's armor class at any time by right-clicking on the creature and going to the examine section, and you can see it there as well as some of the other information about that creature. You can also see specifically what you have rolled at any time by checking the combat log and hovering over that section in your attack roll. Whether you missed or hit, you'll be able to see the modifiers and the dice roll that you had as well as the creature's armor class. Now, once you make an attack roll, if you have advantage or disadvantage on the creature you're trying to attack, you will get an extra dice roll. So for advantage and disadvantage, you'll roll 2 attack die to see if your attack lands. If you have advantage, you take the highest die. If you have disadvantage, you take the lowest die. So generally, you want to avoid a disadvantage situation and maximize your advantage potential. The best way to trigger an advantage is by attacking from stealth, using the hide action and attacking with a sneak attack from there. This is best done outside of combat or by taking the high ground where you will naturally get advantage on the creature you're trying to fight. If you have any ranged characters like a spellcaster or a bow user, every fight you should be trying to get them onto the high ground so you can maximize your advantages and also give them more control over the battlefield. If you attack a prone enemy, this will also give you advantage on them, and there are also a couple of spells that will give you advantage on the creature based on the effects that they apply. Speaking of spells that apply effects, not all spells will just do a straight damage roll. Some of them, when you read the description, they will mention a saving throw. A saving throw represents an attempt to resist a spell, a trap, poison, or any other kind of effect. If a creature is required to make a saving throw, they roll a d20 dice based on the attribute that is required, which it will say in the spell description, adding any proficiencies that they may have for that attribute, and the required dice for a saving throw to succeed by a spell is determined by by the caster's spellcasting ability and the proficiency bonus on top of that. What this value is per attribute, I haven't been able to find a simple way to find this, but you can get it in the combat log in the same way you can see your attack rolls. So that's probably the best way to find it. But as a general rule, you want to be avoiding throwing a saving throw check onto a creature that has a high attribute in that saving throw. Say, for example, if you're throwing a wisdom saving throw at the creature, if you examine the creature and they have a high wisdom, it's probably not a good idea to use that spell, as they have a higher chance of succeeding on that throw. Usually, if a creature succeeds the saving throw, then the effect isn't applied. They have to fail the throw for the effect that you are trying to apply to the creature to actually work. I hope that makes sense. Saving throws are a little confusing. Now let's get into something that's a little easier. Fire. Every good adventurer should know how to make fire. In any combat encounter, even before you actually start the fight, you should be checking your surroundings in the battlefield. Oil barrels can be set alight, causing an explosion in the same way that you could in Divinity Original Sin. You can also hover over any specific terrain effect, and it'll typically tell you how you can manipulate that effect. For example, for blood, you can actually freeze that with a spell like Ray of Frost. This makes the wizard or any other class that can cast these elemental spells really powerful in a lot of fights. You can also create your own terrain effects with things like a grease bottle, where you can throw that on the ground and then set it afire with Firebolt. As a quick side note, I half expect some of these effects to be modified by the time the game actually fully releases and comes out of early access. Traditional 5e D&D doesn't treat a lot of these terrain effects in the same way that Larian Studios' version of Baldur's Gate 3 and D&D is actually treating them. For example, you can't create a pool of blood on the ground just by swinging at an enemy and then Ray of Frost that specific enemy, and it will also set the blood on the ground on fire, causing the creature to pass a saving throw on whether or not they fall over because the ground is frozen. It's a fun mechanic, but it's kind of broken in its current form, and I do half expect Larian to make changes here, so just a word of warning that this may actually change. The terrain effects like fire also do a ton of damage to you and to enemies, so make sure you are well away from fire when you create these kind of explosions. Back on topic, and something that's a bit more traditional to D&D is the ability to affect the world around you and interesting in creative ways. In most fights, a good rule is to look up. There is often something up there that you can shoot down: a big heavy boulder, a brazier, a stalagmite, all sorts of things. If these objects hit enemies, they'll give you a great advantage in combat because they'll do a ton of damage to that enemy. I don't want to get into specifics around how you should create your party or your characters in this video. This video is just focused on combat itself. I do have videos on the channel about builds and just some other character creation tips as well. So if you are looking for more specific character focus tips, then check out those videos. We're just focusing on combat here. However, we are going to cover a couple of spells that you should try before you actually start a combat encounter. Mage Armor being the first one on the list. Mage Armor increases your character's armor class, which is very important so that you can avoid some damage. False Life is another important one, which gives you some extra XP, and Bless is a concentration spell, so as long as you hold concentration, it gives your characters, or three of your characters rather, a D4 bonus on attack rolls and saving throws, as well as summoning familiars and pets. If you do have a Find Familiar spell or the pets that you can get as a ranger, you should always have one of these out in combat, as it's basically just another free target for the enemies to shoot at and another way for you to get some good damage out into the fight. Starting combat, however, should be done from a stealth attack in any situation that you possibly can. This is the best way to engage enemies, as it does trigger a surprise effect on the enemies, which means that they will skip their first turn in combat. This means that you'll get the free attack from the sneak attack, and then you'll also get an extra action before they can actually have their first turn. Last thing that we'll cover is a couple of neat little interactions that you should know about. If your melee character is out of combat range and you don't have any ranged spells, you can actually throw items at enemies with the throw action. Pick up that and just grab any item that you've got in your inventory. It can literally be anything and throw it at the enemy. Shoving is also really powerful as a bonus action. If you do have a bonus action spare, you should be shoving people left and right, shoving them off edges, shoving them off cliffs. Wherever you can shove people, just shove them all. If one of your allies goes down, there are plenty of ways that you can actually get them up. You can walk over to them and physically help them up. You can cast a healing spell on them that'll freely revive them, but you can also throw healing potions at them. As long as you don't hit them directly, you hit the ground around them, it'll actually heal them and bring them back up as well. You can also pop a candle on the ground, dip your sword into it, then pick up the candle. This will only consume a bonus action, but what it will give you is 1d4 fire damage on your attack roll. So putting the candle down, dipping your sword, and picking it back up actually only requires a bonus action, as it doesn't actually cost anything to put the candle down. And the last big tip is that if you find a backpack, pick up that backpack, and you can use it as a container in your inventory. If you're carrying a ton of scrolls, you can put all the scrolls in the backpack, put the backpack on your hotbar, and then you can just use that container to hold all of those things, similar to how you could in Divinity Original Sin as well. And that is our combat guide for Baldur's Gate 3. If there's anything that you think I've forgotten or anything like that, please do put them in the comments down below so that we can all help each other out. Please follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and on Twitch, where I stream 3 days a week, Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, Australian night times. Hope to see you guys there in the next stream. Thank you for watching this video. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.